The call came on the worst day of my life. I stood there in the front row of the church, staring at a casket that held my husband of 45 years. Daniel. My partner. My everything. Gone in an instant, or so I thought. Around me, people whispered condolences, but none of them spoke to me directly. Instead, they turned to my son Ryan and his wife Nicole, as if they were the ones who'd lost a spouse. "Mama, just rest. Let us handle everything," Ryan had told me that morning, his voice dripping with a tone I'd grown to recognize, concern laced with condescension. Nicole stood beside him, her smile tight and rehearsive. "You've been through so much, Margaret. We've got this." Welcome to this channel where real stories reveal life's hardest truths. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could change how you see the world. Now let's continue. I nodded weakly, too drained to argue. Daniel had collapsed in our garage just 3 days earlier. A heart attack, they said. One moment he was talking about planting a spring garden and the next, he was gone. But as I sat there watching Ryan move through the crowd with eerie composure, something felt off. He didn't look grieving. He looked relieved. And Nicole? Her tears seemed calculated, like an actress hitting her marks. After the burial, people gathered at our home, the house Daniel and I had built our life in. Nicole moved through the rooms like she owned them, orchestrating everything with frightening efficiency. "Margaret, you should rest," she said, handing me tea I hadn't asked for. "It's been such a long day." I stayed in my chair by the window watching them both. That's when Ryan sat across from me, his expression shifting into something rehearsed. "Mama, Nicole and I have been talking. We don't think you should stay in this house alone. It's too big. Too many memories. There are better options." My stomach turned cold. "What kind of options?" He exchanged a glance with Nicole. "Retirement communities. Safe places. With people your age. Activities. Care." "I don't need care," I said, my voice trembling. "This is my home." Nicole leaned in, her hand resting on mine with a softness that felt suffocating. "Margaret, we just want what's best for you. These places are beautiful, elegant even, and we'd visit every weekend. Every weekend. As if I were a chore to check off. Before I could respond, the phone rang. Ryan jumped up to answer it, and I could hear his voice from the kitchen, sharp, dismissive. When he returned, his face was tight with irritation. "Someone from Dad's office," he muttered. "Wanted to talk to you about paperwork." "What paperwork?" "I don't know. I told them you weren't available. That I'd handle it." Something about his tone made my pulse quicken. "Ryan, your father worked there for 30 years. If they need to speak with me, I should." "Mama, please. We're handling everything. You don't need to worry about paperwork right now." But I was worried. That night, alone in the bed I'd shared with Daniel for decades, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, too heavy. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Mrs. Margaret Whitmore?" A man's voice, calm, serious. "Yes. My name is Robert Thornton. I was your husband's boss at Hamilton and Associates Financial." My breath caught. "Mr. Thornton." "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm so sorry for your loss. Daniel was extraordinary. Everyone here valued him deeply." "Thank you," I whispered. There was a pause. Then his voice dropped. "Mrs. Whitmore, I need to see you. Urgently. There's something you need to know about the last few months of your husband's life." My heart pounded. "What do you mean? I can't discuss this over the phone. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? 10 o'clock. I suppose so, but..." "And ma'am," his voice grew firmer, "it's critical that you don't mention this to your son or daughter-in-law." Daniel was very specific about that. The air left my lungs. "Why? What's going on?" "Tomorrow, Mrs. Whitmore. Please. Your husband left very clear instructions. If anything happened to him, I was to speak only with you. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, clutching the phone, my mind racing. Daniel had known. He'd known something was going to happen, and whatever it was, he didn't want Ryan to find out. But what Robert was about to show me would shatter everything I thought I knew about my own family. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. For the first time since Daniel's death, I had a purpose. I dressed carefully, navy blue suit, the one Daniel always said made me look strong. I needed that strength today. Ryan called early, as he had every morning since the funeral. "Morning, Mama. How'd you sleep? Nicole and I were thinking you should stay with us for a few days." "I'm fine, son." I kept my voice steady. "Actually, I have to go out this morning." Silence. "Go out where?" "Think fast, Margaret." "The pharmacy. I'm out of my blood pressure medication." "I can pick that up for you." "You don't need to." "Ryan, I'm perfectly capable of driving to the drugstore. I'm not an invalid." His sigh was audible. "All right. But call if you need anything." I hung up, hands trembling. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who loves powerful real-life tales. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life at this channel. Now back to what happened next. The Hamilton and Associates financial building loomed ahead, 20 stories of glass and steel. I'd never been to the executive floors before. Daniel worked in internal audit. Quiet, dependable, invisible. But today I was going to the top. Robert Thornton's office was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, mahogany furniture, an aura of power. He stood when I entered, mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit. But his eyes held something unexpected. Genuine concern. "Mrs. Whitmore. Thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair. "Please sit." I did, feeling out of place in this world of wealth and influence. "First," Robert began, "I want you to know your husband was one of the most valuable people we've ever had here. 30 years. Not a single complaint. Not one." "Thank you," I said quietly. He walked to a file cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. When he placed it on the desk in front of me, my heart began to race. "Mrs. Whitmore, over the last 6 months, Daniel came to see me multiple times. He had concerns. Serious concerns." "About what?" Robert's eyes met mine. "About his family." The words didn't register at first. "My family." He opened the folder. Inside were pages and pages of documents, handwritten notes in Daniel's familiar script, photocopies of forms, printed emails. "Daniel believed that your son and daughter-in-law were trying to manipulate him into making significant changes to his will and to his bank accounts." I shook my head. "That's impossible. Ryan would never." "Mrs. Whitmore." Robert's voice was gentle but firm. "Did you know that over the past 8 months, Ryan and Nicole visited Daniel repeatedly, often when you weren't home?" My mouth went dry. "They pressured him," Robert continued. "They told him it would be better for you if he signed documents giving Ryan full legal power over your finances and medical decisions. In case something happened to him." He slid a paper toward me. It was a power of attorney form, partially filled out. Daniel's signature at the bottom crossed out. "He almost signed it," Robert said. "But at the last moment he didn't. And that's when things got worse." "Worse how?" Robert flipped to another page. "When Daniel refused, Ryan became angry. He accused your husband of being selfish, of not caring about your future." I felt dizzy. "But there's more." Robert's expression darkened. "Nicole began telling Daniel that you were showing signs of confusion, memory loss. She suggested you needed closer supervision." "That's a lie," I whispered. "My memory is fine." Daniel knew that, which is why he started keeping records. He turned the folder toward me fully, page after page. Dates, times, Conversations transcribed in Daniel's meticulous handwriting. My husband had been documenting a conspiracy against me. Why didn't he tell me? My voice cracked. Robert's face softened. He didn't want to worry you until he was certain. He hoped he was wrong. Suddenly, a loud knock shattered the silence. We both turned, and my heart stopped. Standing in the doorway were Ryan and Nicole. Their faces were a mixture of shock and something far darker. "Mama," Ryan said, his voice cold. "What are you doing here?" Nicole stepped forward, her smile strained. "Margaret, we were so worried when we couldn't find you. Why didn't you tell us you were coming here?" Robert stood slowly, his posture protective. "Mr. Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore. This is a private meeting between your mother and me. I'd appreciate it if you respected that." Nicole's laugh was sharp, forced. "With all due respect, Mr. Thornton, Margaret has been very fragile since Daniel's death. We don't think it's appropriate for her to make important decisions without family supervision." Family supervision. The words hit me like ice water. "I'm 68 years old," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I'm not a child." Ryan and Nicole exchanged a look. One I'd seen 100 times but never understood until now. "Of course you're not, Mama," Ryan said, but his tone was patronizing. "We just want to protect you from people who might take advantage of your grief." I glanced at Robert, then back at the folder on the desk. "Robert," I said deliberately, "could you give me a few minutes alone with my son and daughter-in-law?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. I'll be right outside." The moment the door closed, the air in the room changed. Ryan visibly relaxed, as if he'd won something. "Mama, I don't know what that man's been telling you, but you need to understand. People can be very manipulative when money is involved." "Money?" I repeated. Nicole sat beside me, her voice syrupy. "Margaret, honey, we know Daniel had a considerable life insurance policy. And with the house and savings, there are people who prey on widows." Something cold settled in my chest. "How do you know about Daniel's life insurance?" The silence stretched thin. "Well," Ryan said slowly, "Dad mentioned it a few months ago when we were talking about making sure you were taken care of." "Funny," I said. "He never mentioned those conversations to me." Before anyone could respond, I heard it. A sound that stopped my heart. A cough. Cough I would recognize anywhere. The three of us turned toward the private bathroom connected to Robert's office. The door opened slowly, and then he stepped out. "Daniel. My husband. Alive." I screamed, or maybe I didn't. I can't remember. What I do remember is the world tilting, my vision blurring, and Daniel rushing toward me. "Hello, Margaret," he said softly, his hand steadying me. "I'm so sorry." "What, how?" I couldn't form words. Behind us, Nicole gasped. Ryan swore. "This is impossible," Ryan stammered. "You're dead. We saw you. There was a funeral. A death certificate." Daniel straightened, his arm still around me. "A falsified death certificate. With help from a very discreet doctor and a funeral director who owed me a favor." "But why?" I whispered. Daniel looked at Ryan and Nicole, his expression hardening in a way I'd never seen. "Because I found out what you were planning." Nicole went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." Daniel walked to the desk and opened the folder. He pulled out a stack of documents, emails, text messages, printed recordings. "Then you don't recognize this?" He began reading aloud. "Mama's starting to show signs of dementia. I think you should consider the possibility of her needing full-time care soon. If Dad signs the documents I prepared, we can make sure she has the best possible care when the time comes." Ryan's face drained of color. Daniel continued. "Nicole, the sooner the better. The house alone is worth almost $500,000. That's not counting his retirement savings." I felt like I'd been struck. They'd been calculating, planning, waiting. This is taken out of context, Ryan said desperately. We were worried about Mama. Worried? Daniel's voice was ice. You were planning to declare her incompetent and put her in an institution so you could sell the house and spend our savings. Nicole stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Faking your death is a crime, Daniel. Fraudulent documents. You could go to prison. Daniel smiled coldly. I'm willing to face the consequences. But first, I wanted Margaret to know the truth. He turned to me, taking my hands. My love, for the last 8 months they've been visiting me when you weren't home. First, I thought they were just concerned. But gradually, I realized every conversation was designed to convince me that you were losing your mind. That you needed supervision. That it would be selfish of me not to make legal arrangements to protect you. I looked at Ryan, my son, the baby I'd held, loved, raised. Is that true? For a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Shame maybe. But then it hardened. Mama, you don't understand the financial pressures we face. Nicole and I have debts. Obligations. It was true. All of it. Daniel squeezed my hands. When I realized what was happening, I hired a private investigator. He pulled out more documents. Ryan has gambling debts of over $150,000. And Nicole, she's been using credit cards in your name without your knowledge. The room spun. Credit cards in my name? 3 of them, Daniel said quietly, with a total debt of over $10,000. Nicole exploded. Enough. I don't know what sick game you're playing, Daniel, but this ends now. Margaret, let's go. Your husband has clearly lost his mind. But I didn't move. For the first time in months, maybe years, everything made sense. The constant visits. The exaggerated concern. The suggestions about my memory. The rush to make decisions after the funeral. They hadn't been protecting me. They'd been preparing to destroy me. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice steady. But I think you two should leave. Ryan's face twisted into something unrecognizable. He was no longer my son. He was a stranger who had just lost something he'd been counting as his. And what Daniel revealed next would prove that their betrayal went even deeper than I could have imagined. Robert returned to the office, his expression grave. Ryan and Nicole stood frozen near the door, trapped between fleeing and fighting. Daniel helped me sit on the leather sofa as Robert brought me water. My hands were still shaking. Margaret, Daniel said gently, kneeling in front of me. There's more you need to know. More? How could there possibly be more? Robert opened another section of the folder and spread photographs across the coffee table. These were taken by the private investigator over the last 6 weeks, Daniel explained. I picked them up with trembling fingers. The first showed Ryan entering a casino. The second captured him at a poker table, chips stacked high, representing amounts I couldn't even fathom. The third showed Nicole in a jewelry store, trying on a necklace that probably cost more than our mortgage. Ryan, Daniel said, his voice colder than winter, do you want to explain to your mother how you could bet $25,000 in a single night when you told me you needed help paying your mortgage? Ryan said nothing. His jaw clenched. Or maybe Nicole can explain how she bought a $4,000 necklace last week, when you're supposedly struggling financially. Nicole's fake composure cracked. That necklace was an imitation. An imitation from Cartier? Robert interjected, pulling out a receipt. Because we have the purchase record right here. Paid with a credit card in the name of Margaret Whitmore. The betrayal was suffocating. You used my name to buy jewelry? Nicole's voice turned desperate. Margaret, you don't understand. Ryan and I are under so much pressure. His debts are expenses. We just needed temporary help. Temporary? I echoed. How long have you been stealing from me? Daniel pulled out another document. According to our investigator, the fraudulent transaction started 1.5 years ago. They opened 3 credit cards in your name. made unauthorized withdrawals from your savings account totaling over $10,000. And they've been intercepting your bank statements so you wouldn't notice. Intercepting my mail. The memory hit like lightning. Nicole had offered to help me organize my financial documents months ago. So sweet. So helpful. Margaret, honey, I know these things can be confusing. Why don't you let me handle organizing everything? Daniel has so much work, and you have enough to worry about. I trusted her. God, I trusted her. But that's not the worst of it, Daniel said, his voice dropping. What could be worse? I whispered. Daniel looked Ryan dead in the eyes. Tell your mother about the plan for the assisted living facility. Ryan went completely pale. I don't know what you're talking about. No. Robert pressed a button on a small voice recorder. Ryan's voice filled the room. Nicole, we need to speed up the timeline. Dad's asking questions, and Mama isn't acting as confused as we hoped. Nicole's voice responded. I already spoke to the director at Rosewood Manor. You said you have the medical documents we need. The fake documents are ready. Once Mama's institutionalized, we can sell the house immediately. The market's good right now. My stomach turned. And what if Daniel objects? Nicole asked. Ryan's reply was chilling. Daniel isn't going to be a problem for much longer. The recording stopped. The silence was deafening. That conversation was recorded 3 weeks ago, Daniel said quietly. 3 weeks before my death. I looked at Ryan, searching for an explanation, any explanation. Daniel isn't going to be a problem for much longer, I repeated slowly. What does that mean, Ryan? My son finally spoke, but his voice was unrecognizable. Mama, you're misinterpreting. We were just worried about Dad. His blood pressure was high. He'd been stressed. Are you saying you were just waiting for me to die naturally? Daniel asked, standing. Nicole stepped forward, all pretense gone. Daniel, don't be dramatic. We were being realistic about the future. Realistic, I echoed. Or trying to speed up the process? Robert pulled out yet another document. It was a medical report. I read the first lines with growing horror. Patient shows clear signs of early dementia. Episodes of confusion. Short-term memory loss, disorientation. Evaluation for full-time care recommended. This is a lie, I said, my voice barely audible. I've never seen this doctor. Dr. Harrison Cole. I don't know this name. He's Nicole's doctor, Daniel said. Someone who was willing to sign a false diagnosis in exchange for $10,000. I stared at Nicole, the woman I'd called daughter for 5 years. You paid a doctor to say I have dementia. Nicole's panic finally showed. Margaret, you have to understand. We were trying to protect you. Protect me from what? I shouted, surprised by my own strength. From yourself. Ryan yelled back. Mama, you're old. Your mind isn't what it used to be. Nicole and I can see things you can't. Daniel stepped between us. Margaret has no mental problems. The only problem is that you've been gaslighting a 68-year-old woman for over a year, making her question her own reality so you could steal her money and her house. Gaslighting? I asked. Robert explained gently. It's psychological manipulation, making someone doubt their own perception of reality. Daniel sat beside me and took my hands. My love, do you remember a few months ago when you couldn't find your car keys? And Nicole suggested your memory was slipping. I nodded. It had been terrifying. We found the keys in Nicole's purse, Daniel said softly. She'd taken them. And the time you couldn't find your blood pressure medication, he continued. Ryan said you probably forgot where you put it. My heart pounded. It was in Ryan's car. One by one, Daniel explained the incidents I'd interpreted as signs of mental decline. The missing purse. The appointment I was sure was at a different time. The conversations I couldn't recall. All of them orchestrated. For months, Daniel said, They've been systematically making you doubt your own mind, preparing the ground to declare you incompetent. I looked at Ryan and Nicole, two people I'd loved and trusted. Why? I whispered. We're family. Nicole laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. Family? Margaret, you and Daniel have been sitting in this huge house, hoarding money you never use, while Ryan and I struggle every month. You never asked us for help, I said weakly. We didn't want your help, Ryan said. We wanted what's rightfully ours. Rightfully yours? Ryan exploded. That house should be ours. That money should be ours. You're going to die soon anyway. The silence that followed was absolute. In that moment, I knew I'd lost my son forever. But I also knew something else. My mind was completely clear. I wasn't confused. I didn't have dementia. I was the victim of a cruel, calculated betrayal. And now that I knew the truth, I would never be the same. But the revelations weren't over yet. And what came next would force me to make the hardest decision of my life. The days that followed were a blur of emotions I'll never forget. Daniel stayed in a discreet hotel while Robert helped us navigate the legal chaos of his resurrection. I returned home, but for the first time in months I didn't feel like a prisoner. Ryan and Nicole had left Robert's office in shock and fury. For 48 hours I heard nothing from them. Then on a Wednesday morning they appeared at my door. I watched them arrive from the living room window. Ryan walked with that determination I recognized from his childhood. The look he wore when he'd done something wrong and was set on convincing me it wasn't his fault. I opened the door before they could knock. Mama, Ryan said, his voice carefully controlled. Can we come in? I let them in but didn't invite them to sit. We stood in the living room that had witnessed so many happy memories, now a battlefield. We've been thinking, Ryan began, about what happened in the office. I'm sure you have. Nicole stepped forward. Margaret, there are a lot of misunderstandings here. Yes, Ryan and I were concerned about your well-being, but everything we did was with good intentions. Good intentions, I repeated. Like using my name to open credit cards? Those were for emergencies, Ryan said quickly. Expenses related to your care. Like a $4,000 necklace? Nicole sighed. Okay, I made a mistake. But Margaret, you have to understand the pressure we've been under. Your debts are not my responsibility, I said, surprised by how easily the words came. Ryan changed tactics. Mama, Dad is manipulating you. Doesn't it seem strange that he would fake his own death? What kind of man does that? The kind of man who is trying to protect his wife from a son, who is planning to steal everything from her. We weren't stealing, Ryan exploded. That house, that money, it was eventually going to be ours anyway. We were just trying to speed up the process because we needed help. The brutal honesty of that statement left me speechless for a moment. Ryan, I finally said, you are telling me that you have been waiting for Daniel and me to die so you could have our money. That's not how it sounds. Nicole intervened desperately. All families plan for the future. Families do not plan to declare their parents incompetent with false medical diagnoses. Nicole turned pale. That was just a precaution in case you truly needed care in the future. A precaution you paid for with $10,000. Ryan ran his hands through his hair, a sign he was losing patience. Mama, listen to yourself. You've become paranoid. Dad is filling your head with crazy ideas. Crazy ideas, I repeated. Like the idea that I deserve to live in my own home without anyone trying to declare me crazy. No one is trying to declare you crazy, Ryan yelled. I walked to the phone and dialed a number I had memorized. What are you doing? Nicole asked. Calling Daniel, I replied. I think he should be here for this conversation. Mama, no, Ryan said, but it was already too late. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later. He had been expecting my call, probably knowing this moment would come. When he walked in, the tension in the room immediately intensified. Ryan, Nicole? He greeted them in a neutral voice. Dad, Ryan said. We need to resolve this as a family. Daniel sat next to me on the sofa, automatically taking my hand. I'm listening. Nicole sat in the chair opposite us, assuming her most vulnerable posture. Daniel, I know what we did looks bad, but you have to understand that we were desperate. Explain the desperation, Daniel said. Ryan began to speak quickly, the words rushing out as if he had been rehearsing this speech. The debts piled up faster than we expected. The casino, I know it was stupid, but I thought I could win money fast. And when that didn't work, we panicked. So you decided to rob your parents? Daniel asked. It's not robbing. Ryan shouted. You have more money than you'll ever spend. That house is too big for two people. We were just accelerating the inheritance. Accelerating the inheritance by declaring me incompetent? I asked. Nicole started to cry. Not real tears, but the kind of calculated crying I had seen her use on other occasions when she wanted to get something. Margaret, we never wanted to hurt you. We just wanted to ensure you were taken care of, and that we could pay off our debts. You thought you could manage both by stealing my money and locking me up in an assisted living facility. It wasn't a nursing home, Ryan said. Rosewood Manor is a very nice retirement community. You would have been comfortable there. Against my will. You would have adapted eventually, Nicole murmured. The silence that followed was absolute. I think it was at that moment that even they realized how monstrous what they had been planning sounded. Daniel slowly stood up. Ryan, I want you to listen very carefully to what I am about to say. My son looked up, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the child he had been. Your mother and I have decided that you are no longer a part of our lives, Daniel said in a firm but unemotional voice. We don't want to see you. We don't want to hear from you. And we definitely don't want you to have access to any of our finances or properties. Ryan jumped to his feet. You can't do that. I'm your son. You are my biological son, Daniel corrected. But you stopped being my family the day you decided our death would be more convenient for you than our life. Nicole also stood up, her crying now completely abandoned. This is ridiculous, Daniel. Margaret, you can't cut us off completely. We're family. No, I said, also standing up. Family doesn't try to steal. Family doesn't try to make their loved ones doubt their own sanity. Family doesn't count the days until you die to cash in your money. Ryan looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. You know what, Mama? Maybe you're right. Maybe this is better for everyone. Because I was already tired of pretending that I cared about you, when all I really wanted was for you to get out of the way. Those words hit me like a physical slap. But strangely, they also liberated me. All the love, all the guilt, all the hope that there might be some misunderstanding evaporated at that moment. Leave, I said simply. Take your things out of my house and leave. Gladly, Ryan said. But this doesn't end here. We're going to fight this. We're going to prove that Dad faked his death, that you're not competent to make decisions. Daniel smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Go ahead. And when you do, be sure to explain to the judge why you were planning to declare your mother incompetent with fake medical documents. I'm sure he'll be very interested in hearing about that. Ryan and Nicole looked at each other, and I could see the panic growing in their eyes as they realized they had no exit strategy. This doesn't end here, Ryan muttered. But his voice had lost all conviction. Yes, it does, I said. It ends exactly here. I watched them leave, knowing it would probably be the last time I would see my son. I should have felt sadness, but all I felt was a deep, clean relief. For the first time in over a year I was free. 6 months later everything had changed, and I finally understood what freedom truly meant. 6 months later, I am sitting on the porch of our new home, watching Daniel plant roses in the garden he had always dreamed of having. We moved to a small town called Cedar Falls, 3 hours away, where no one knows our story and where we can simply be Daniel and Margaret, a retired couple enjoying their golden years. The transition was not easy. There were moments, especially during the first few weeks, when I woke up in the pre-dawn hours wondering if we had done the right thing. Cutting off Ryan completely felt like amputating a part of my body, no matter how infected it was. But Daniel constantly reminded me why we had made that decision. "My love," he would say when he found me crying at night, "you cannot save someone who is willing to destroy you." Robert had helped us manage the legal complications. Falsifying the death certificate resulted in some fines and community service for Daniel. But when the evidence of Ryan and Nicole's conspiracy was presented, the judge was surprisingly sympathetic. "I've seen many cases of elder financial abuse," he had told us during the hearing, "but rarely one as systematic and cruel as this." Ryan and Nicole tried to follow through on their threat to fight legally, but their case quickly fell apart when the district attorney decided to investigate the fraudulent credit cards and the false medical documents. In the end, they were the ones who faced criminal charges, not us. The last I heard of them, Ryan was serving 18 months of probation for financial fraud. Nicole had lost her nursing license. They had divorced 6 weeks after everything came to light, each blaming the other for dragging them into such a desperate situation. I feel no satisfaction in their downfall. I only feel a strange sense of closure, like when you finish reading a book that had been disturbing you, and you can finally put it aside. We sold the big house where we had raised Ryan. It was too full of complicated memories, and frankly they were right about one thing: it was too big for 2 people. With the money from the sale, we bought this smaller house in Cedar Falls with enough land for Daniel's garden, and a view of the mountains that makes every sunrise feel like a gift. We also paid off all the debts Ryan and Nicole had accumulated in our name. Not because we owed it to them, but because we wanted to start this new phase of our lives completely clean, without any financial connection to our past. Before we continue, I want to thank every single one of you watching this channel. Your comments, your stories, and your support mean everything. If this story has touched you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe. We have so many more powerful stories to share with you. Now let's finish Margaret's journey. Do you think Ryan will ever understand what he did? I asked Daniel one evening as we prepared dinner together. Daniel stops chopping vegetables and looks at me with those wise eyes that made me fall in love with him 46 years ago. "I don't know, my love. But it is no longer our responsibility to teach him. That is the hardest lesson I have learned in these months. For 35 years, I felt responsible for Ryan's happiness and well-being. Even when he became an adult, even when he got married, he was still my baby who needed protection and guidance. But some adults choose paths their parents cannot follow. And sometimes the truest love is knowing when to let them go. We've made new friends here. Linda and George, the couple next door, invited us to dinner last week. During the conversation, Linda mentioned that they had cut ties with their son 10 years ago. He was an addict, she explained simply, and every time we tried to help him, he dragged us into his chaos. In the end, we had to choose: save our marriage and our sanity, or continue to be victims of his destruction. Was it difficult? I asked. George took Linda's hand. It was the hardest decision of our lives, but it was also the one that saved us. I hadn't realized until that moment how much I needed to hear that we weren't the only parents who had had to make such an extreme decision. This morning, Daniel brought me coffee in bed, a routine we've developed in our new life. As I took my first sip, I noticed he had left a letter on the nightstand. "What is this?" I asked. "It arrived yesterday. It's from Ryan." My heart stopped for a moment. "Did you read it?" "It's for you." I held the letter for several minutes before opening it. The handwriting was the same I had seen on thousands of Mother's Day cards, but the words were those of a stranger. "Mama," it began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. Nicole and I divorced. She blamed everything that happened on my gambling debts, But I know the truth is more complicated than that. He went on to explain that he was in therapy, trying to understand how he had reached the point of conspiring against his own parents. The therapist says I have entitlement issues, that I've always felt I deserved things without working for them. It came to the point near the end. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I understand why you had to walk away from me. If you ever want to give me another chance, I'll be working to be the person I should have been all along. When I finished reading, I handed the letter to Daniel. What do you think? I asked. I think he sounds like someone who is trying to change, Daniel said honestly. But I also think words are easy. And what do you want to do? Nothing, I said, surprising myself with the certainty of my answer. I want to continue living our life. And if one day he proves with real actions that he has changed, maybe we can reconsider. And if he never does? I looked out the window at the garden where the roses Daniel had planted were beginning to bloom. Then we will live a beautiful life without him. That afternoon, while Daniel worked in the garden, I decided to write my own letter, not to Ryan but to myself, a kind of declaration of independence from the guilt I had been carrying. Dear 68-year-old Margaret, forgive yourself for loving so much that it almost cost you everything. Forgive yourself for trusting so much that it almost cost you your sanity. Forgive yourself for believing that family love is always unconditional. But also celebrate your strength. Celebrate that when you finally saw the truth, you had the courage to act on it. Celebrate that you chose your own life over everyone else's comfort. That night, as Daniel and I prepared for sleep in our new bedroom with a view of the mountains, he asked me, "Do you regret anything?" Cutting him off completely. "No," I replied without hesitation. Not seeing the signs sooner sometimes. But not this. And me faking my death? I smiled. It was dramatic but effective. Daniel laughed. Definitely effective. We were silent for a moment, listening to the sounds of the night in our new home. You know what the strangest thing is? I said finally. What? I feel younger now than I did when I was 50, as if I had been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there. Daniel took my hand in the darkness. That's what happens when you stop living for other people and start living for yourself. This morning I received a call from Linda, our new neighbor. Margaret, she said, a group of us are going to the farmer's market on Saturday, and then we thought we'd grab lunch at that new French cafe. Would you like to come? I'd love to, I replied without hesitation. A year ago, I would have had to consult with Ryan and Nicole, make sure they didn't need anything, consider if it was appropriate for a woman my age to go out with friends. Now, I simply say yes to the things that make me happy. As I write these lines, sitting on my porch with a cup of tea and the sound of Daniel whistling as he waters his roses, I realize that this is the first time in decades that I feel completely free. Free from guilt. Free from expectations. Free from the need to justify my decisions to people who never had my best interests at heart. Ryan was right about one thing. Daniel and I probably won't live many more years. But the years we have left will be ours. Lived on our terms, surrounded by people who love us unconditionally, and without hidden agendas. And I discovered that is worth more than any toxic family tie I may have lost in the process. Sometimes the greatest freedom comes from having the courage to walk into the unknown, leaving behind even those you loved most, when the love had become indistinguishable from the harm. Tonight I will sleep soundly for the first time in 2 years, knowing that tomorrow I will wake up to a life that is completely mine. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for being here with us at this channel. These real-life stories matter, and your support helps us share them with the world. Drop a comment below telling us what you think, and don't forget to check out the 2 stories I've added on screen. Everyone loves them. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself.